Hi, JP here. Um, I'm now assuming that you've received your puzzle and maybe have watched some of my previous videos. Um, Now, I'd like to today to try to give you some tips on using toothpicks. In these models, toothpicks are used both as structural items and quite often in shafts. Um, so in both cases, they must be the right size to do the job. In the case of toothpicks that are used for structural items, they have to fit snugly into the part and not too tight that you have to use excessive force. On the other hand, in some cases, they're used as shafts. And then they have to be, for example, in the case of this wheel here, you should be able to move them, freely in such a way that they do their job, as shafts. Now, typically, there's only, I guess, I don't know how many manufacturers of toothpicks there are in the world, but they're fairly standard in size. But still, you're going to see that in case of some pieces, let's take the example. I don't know if you can see it. It's such a tiny little piece. This one is part of the structure of the puzzle, and you have to insert the toothpick in that part up to a certain distance. Now, as you can see, this is a pretty fragile part, and most times you don't have spares. Sometimes you do, but not that many, and you certainly don't have spares for all the parts. So you may only have one of these, and if it breaks, then most times you won't be able to complete the model. So what seems to be a stupid thing ends up being critical sometimes. So what I do typically is I sand them, if they're used for a structural reason, I sand them lightly with a piece of folded sandpaper like this. In this case, it's an 80 grit. It could be 120 or something, but 240 that they provide is a bit too fine. So you just sand it a bit, like this, going up and down patiently, and whatever, and then you test it in your piece, and if you can push it in, a bit, it should be okay. But still, in a lot of cases, it's hard to really define whether or not it's snug or too tight or whatever. Too tight, it's fairly easy, to figure out. But snug, the definition of snug is kind of obscure to me. So in order to figure out if it's right, I usually use a block like this to insert the toothpick. Now, this is a hard maple block in which I've drilled a hole about a 1/4 inch in there and about an inch deep or something. And then what I usually do, in order to insert the toothpick, I cut it to size. Now, this is way too long for most jobs, but let's say like this, for example. Let's cut a bit. Now, essentially, I push it in just a bit like this and put it in this little hole there. And I use my trusted hammer that is here and just gently bang it in slowly. And as you can see, it went through really nicely. And this trick is especially useful when you have significant number of parts to put one over the other. In this case, for example, I've got 3 parts. So this little hole is really handy to do the job. And what I now let's assume that I want, I have to push this part onto that one. Now you can do it with your hands like that, just slowly going and pressing on the piece until you're happy. The problem that I have with that approach is that if you don't control your strength very much, you may break the part. For example, in this case, if I push these two parts together too strongly, they may break here, okay? And very often it happens that, you have, in this case, I have five toothpicks, but sometimes you may have up to 10 on some wheels, for example. In this case, what I do, and here's my trick for now, I position the piece on my wood block, and I hope you can see here. Okay, and what I have a dowel. This is a 1/2 inch dowel in which I've drilled a hole at about 1/4 inch. Okay, and essentially what I would do then is use that to bang the pieces in slowly. For example, you go like this, it bangs a bit, then this way, then this way, and so forth, until all the pieces are nicely attached to each other. So you may not want to do that. You may want to to push it yourself and all that, but chances are that at some point you're going to break a part, and if that part is a structural part, well, that's it. You're done with your hobby. Now, what is okay? The next thing that I'd like to talk about today is sanding. You remember certainly that I've talked about in the previous clips, and I encourage you to get some stick-on sanding paper. I've talked about already. For example, I think that in my last clip I talked about this one, and you cut some edges, wood edges, and you can stick, a piece of sanding paper on it, and it's not limited to flat surface, but it's handy for curved surface like gears, for example. Now I make a point of having a few of them. For example, this is about 1/4 inch, and this is a bigger one, and so try to have a collection of these, and you'll see they're going to get really useful at some point in time. Okay, that's it for now, and I'll be back to you soon. Thank you for watching.